Welcome to TeachMeAll.com. In this video, we're going to show you how to change the front brake pads and rotors on this 2005 Chevrolet Silverado 1500.
That's right. Now we're going to review with you the tools we'll be using today.
Two jack stands and two wheel chocks. We need new brake pads and two new brake rotors. We need some brake fluid, some brake cleaner, some high temperature caliper grease, some anti-seize lubricant, some thread lock, some hose clamp pliers, an 8-inch C-clamp, a screwdriver, and a 20mm socket and ratchet for the lug nuts, an 18mm socket for the caliper bolts, and a 19mm socket for the guide pin bolts. We have a T30 Star Socket to remove the rotor retaining screw, and a 10mm box end wrench for the bleeder screw. We need a torque wrench, bungee cord, a bleeder kit, safety glasses, a shop light, some shop towels, a rubber mallet, a 19mm thin wrench to hold the guide pins in place when you remove the guide pin bolts, two M10 by 1.5 by 30mm bolts. It also requires a 17mm socket for these bolts, disc brake spreader. Then we're going to set the emergency brake, put wheel chocks behind both rear tires. Then we'll use our screwdriver to remove our hubcap. With the hubcap removed, we'll remove these fake plastic lug nuts that hold the center cap in place. Once we remove the center cap, we have access to the real lug nuts. And we're just going to break them loose by turning them a quarter to a half a turn. Then we move to the opposite wheel and do the exact same thing. Then we're going to place our jack under the cross member, which is located behind the front tires. We'll slowly raise the vehicle off the ground. Once both front tires are off the ground, we'll position our jack stands under the frame. Then we're going to lower the vehicle onto the jack stands. With the vehicle safely secured on the jack stands, we'll go ahead and remove the lug nuts and then remove the tires. We'll store our lug nuts, our center cap, and our hubcap on the tire and slide it under the vehicle. Now we move to the other side and do the exact same thing. Since we're beginning with the passenger side, we'll turn the wheels to the driver's side so we have access to the back of the caliper. We use our hose clamp pliers on the brake line. Then we remove our dust cover. Use our 10mm wrench over the bleeder screw. Install our bleeder kit, open the bleeder screw. Use our C-clamp to compress the piston inside the caliper. We'll do it on both top and the bottom since this is a dual piston caliper. Once that's done, we'll tighten up the bleeder screw, remove the bleeder kit and install our dust cover. Then we're going to remove the caliper guide pin bolts using our 19mm thin wrench and our socket and ratchet. We'll loosen up the top. And we'll move to the bottom and loosen it up. We'll go ahead and remove it. Now remove the top guide pin bolt. We'll slide the caliper off the rotor. We're going to tie the caliper up with our bungee cord to keep it out of our way, and so it won't hang on the brake line. Then we're going to remove our old brake pads, starting with the outside and then the inner. Now we're going to remove our caliper mounting bracket bolts using our 18mm socket and ratchet. Starting with the top, then moving to the bottom. Then we remove our bolts holding the caliper mounting bracket in place. And we remove our caliper mounting bracket. Then we're going to use our T30 Star Socket to loosen and remove the rotor retaining screw. Then we're going to use our two M10 by 1.5 by 30mm bolts. We'll thread these into the two threaded holes located 180 degrees apart on the rotor. We'll tighten these up by hand, and then we'll use our 17mm socket and ratchet. We'll alternate from side to side as we tighten these up, and this will remove the rotor from the spindle. As you tighten these bolts, this rotor will slide easily off of the spindle. Now we're getting ready to put our new rotor on. Notice the hole in the axle lines up with the hole in the rotor. This is where our retaining screw will go in. Make sure you have these lined up. Then insert your retaining screw and tighten it up using our T30 Star Socket. Then we're going to clean our rotor off with some brake parts cleaner and a clean shop towel on the front and the back. Now we're getting ready to reinstall our caliper mounting bracket. Be sure to compare the new brake hardware with the old brake hardware to get these new pieces installed correctly. In this case, they're all exactly the same. So remove the old piece and install the new piece on both ends. With that done, now we're going to apply some thread lock to the caliper mounting bracket bolts. And then we'll install our caliper mounting bracket. We slide into place. Then install our two bolts, the top one first. Then we'll move and install to the bottom and install that one. We'll tighten these up using our 18mm socket and ratchet. Once we have them snug down, we'll use our torque wrench and torque them to 133 foot-pounds. Then we're going to apply some anti-seize lubricant to the slides where the brake pads fit. This in all 4 positions on the inner and outer. You notice that the 2 brake pads are different, so make sure this is the inner pad and this is the outer pad. First we'll install the inner pad and slide it into place, and then we'll install the outer pad. This is how the outer pad looks when it's installed. This is how the inner pad looks. Then we're going to apply some high temperature caliper grease to the back of both pads. Then we use our fingers to smooth out the grease so we have a thin layer. Now we're getting ready to reinstall our caliper. So remove the bungee cord. Then we're going to compress the piston, so we remove the dust cover, install our wrench, install our bleeder kit. Then we're going to open the bleeder screw. We're going to use an old pad and our disc brake spreader to compress the piston. As you'll notice, we'll tighten up on the bottom, then remove it to the top side and tighten up that. This way we compress both pistons inside the caliper. With the pistons compressed flush within the caliper, we tighten up our bleeder screw, remove our bleeder kit, we install our dust cover, and then we're going to apply some thread lock to the caliper guide pin bolts. We'll slide our caliper into place over the new pads. We'll line it up and insert our caliper guide pin bolts on the top and then the bottom. We'll tighten them down using our 19mm socket and ratchet. When we get ready to tighten them all the way down, we need our 19mm thin wrench also. And we'll also use this thin wrench when we torque these bolts to 74 foot-pounds. And the last thing we'll do is remove our hose clamp pliers and move to the other side. We'll now turn the wheel to the passenger side. This gives us access to the back of the caliper on the driver's side. Use our hose clamp pliers to clamp the brake line. Remove the dust cover. Install our 10mm wrench on the bleeder screw. Start our bleeder kit. We open up the bleeder screw. Using our C-clamp, we'll compress the piston inside the caliper. On the top and the bottom to compress both pistons. Remove our C-clamp, tighten up our bleeder screw, remove the bleeder kit, remove our wrench, and reinstall our dust cover. Then we're going to get ready to remove the caliper guide pin bolts using our 19mm thin wrench and our 19mm socket and ratchet. Starting with the top, then we'll move to the bottom. Remove these bolts, then we'll slide the caliper off the rotor. We'll tie it up using our bungee cord. Remove our brake pads, starting with the outer. Then we'll remove the inner. And then we're going to remove our caliper mounting bracket using our 18mm socket and ratchet. Slide our caliper mounting bracket off the rotor. Then we're going to remove the retaining screw holding the rotor in place using our T30 Star Socket and Ratchet. Then we're going to use our 2 bolts we used earlier. Screw them into the threaded holes on the rotor. Tighten them up with our 17mm socket and ratchet. Remember to alternate from side to side. Continue tightening the bolts until the rotor comes loose. Slide the old rotor off. We'll get ready to install the new rotor. Remember to line up the rotor retaining screw. Insert our rotor retaining screw and tighten it up. Then we're going to clean off the brake rotor with our brake parts cleaner and a clean rag. Then we're going to replace the old hardware on the caliper mounting bracket with the new hardware that came with our new brake pads. We're going to place some thread lock on our caliper mounting bracket bolts. Slide the caliper mounting bracket into place. Insert the caliper mounting bracket bolts. Tighten them down by hand. Then we'll use our 18mm socket and ratchet to tighten the caliper mounting bracket bolts down. Then we're going to torque the caliper mounting bracket bolts to 133 foot-pounds. Then we're going to grease the slides with our anti-seize lubricant. We're going to install our brake pads. We're going to apply some high temperature caliper grease to the back of the pads. Then we're going to get our caliper ready to reinstall over the new pads. We remove it from the bungee cord. Remove the dust cover. Install our wrench over the bleeder screw. Install our bleeder kit. Open up the bleeder screw. And using an old brake pad and our disc brake spreader, we'll compress the pistons inside the caliper. Remember to compress both pistons. Then we're going to tighten up our bleeder screw, remove our brake bleeder kit, remove our wrench, reinstall our dust cover. We need to apply Loctite to the caliper guide pin bolts. Slide the caliper into place. Install our top caliper guide pin bolt and tighten it up by hand. Then we'll install the bottom one. We'll tighten these up with our 19mm socket and ratchet, and we'll torque them with our torque wrench and our 19mm thin wrench to 74 foot-pounds. Then we're going to remove our hose clamp pliers and get ready to bleed the brakes. We raise the hood and we'll check the brake fluid in the master cylinder, and we'll add as needed. We need to fill up to the max line. Then we're going to start on the passenger side since it's farthest away from the master cylinder. Remove our dust cover. Install our wrench and our bleeder kit. You have a partner. Depress the brake pedal and hold it down. Open up the bleeder screw, then close it. Release the brake pedal. Depress the brake pedal again and hold it. Open up the bleeder screw, tighten it back up, release the brake pedal. Continue doing this until there's no more bubbles in the hose in the bleeder kit. Once you're done, tighten the bleeder screw, remove the bleeder kit. Reinstall your dust cover. And we move to the driver's side. Remove the dust cover. Install your wrench and your bleeder kit. Have your partner depress the brake pedal. Open up the bleeder screw. Close the bleeder screw. Release the brake pedal. Remember to never release the brake pedal with the bleeder screw open. This can introduce air into your ABS lines. Continue doing this until there's no more bubbles in the hose for the bleeder kit. Once we're done, we reinstall our dust cover. We check our brake fluid level in the master cylinder, add as needed. Then we're going to straighten up our wheels and install our tires. Place each lug nut on by hand. And we'll snug them down with our 22mm socket and ratchet. We move to the other side, install that wheel, install the lug nuts, and snug them down with our socket and ratchet. Once the lug nuts are snugged down, we'll use our jack to raise up the vehicle, remove our jack stands, and we'll lower the vehicle onto the ground. Then we're going to use our torque wrench and torque the lug nuts to 140 foot-pounds in a crisscross pattern. Then we move to the other side and do the exact same thing. We'll torque the lug nuts to 140 foot-pounds in a crisscross pattern. Once all the lug nuts are torqued, we'll reinstall our center cap with our fake plastic lug nuts. We'll tighten those down by hand with our socket, and then we'll slide our hubcap into place. Using our hand to seat it, but also finishing it up with our rubber mallet. Move to the other side, do the exact same thing. Then we're going to remove our wheel chocks from both rear tires.
Well, we hope this video will help you change the front brake pads and rotors on your 2005 Chevy Silverado 1500.
Send any comments you may have to comments@teachmeall.com. And as always, thank you for visiting teachmeall.com and have a great day.